Welcome, everyone, and thank you for joining a Pivot and Focus Meetup. Today's virtual meetup is Long Time No See, Why Digital Marketing Keeps You Relevant. Before we begin, I have a few housekeeping items to cover. On the right side of your screen, you will see the Go To Webinar sidebar. You can click on the orange arrow to expand or minimize the side panel. Questions are encouraged and will be addressed at the end of today's presentation. So please type your question into the question box and click Send to submit. CPSNs attending this live program will automatically receive zero point 0.5 CEUs added to their online transcript. Finally, today's program is being recorded and will be posted on the Pivot and Focus page within smps.org. Welcome, everyone, and thank you for joining us for a Pivot and Focus virtual meetup. Today's program will address Long Time No See, Why Digital Marketing Keeps You Relevant. Our presenter today is Danielle Gray. Known for her reliability and humor, Danielle is a content marketing strategist with over 9 years of AEC industry experience. Danielle is the owner of DG Marketing Company, a professional services marketing firm committed to contributing and creating genuine humanized marketing that listens and solves instead of tells and sells. Welcome to the program, Danielle. The audience is all yours.
Thank you very much. Hello, everyone. Again, I am Danielle Gray, and that's me dressed up that I haven't done in quite some time, as I'm sure some of you. So that's me right there in the corner, and I am so glad that you guys are joining me today. As you can probably tell, I have a lot of energy, mostly because I haven't been outside my house in a couple of days. For months or whatever, who's counting. But anyway, it's really what we're going to talk about today is going to really focus heavily on what's going on in the world right now, but also how do we prepare for things like this so that we are like completely covered in our marketing efforts, particularly in the AEC industry. So without further ado, I'll go to my next slide here. So that we've seen this a couple of times. A time or two, right? Canceled. You canceled. Everything is basically until further notice. Now things are starting to open up. I am personally in Atlanta, so it's a little scary. There's people outside, a lot of people, and there's just a lot of things going on. So, do we know when the next expo is going to be with thousands of people at once? I don't know. I don't know when the next networking events that we're going to have. I'm not sure when, we'll be able to really have those in-person meetings at the coffee shop. It's going to take some time, and especially, and I would imagine a lot of trust as well. But the idea is that, what happens when all of our regular business development efforts and marketing efforts kind of disappear? And all we're left with, and a lot of you may be in this boat, is that you're kind of left with maybe about 2 or 3 things outside of those business development activities, which is probably proposals and presentations, right? Because if you are a marketer like I was in my design build firm, proposals were it, and that was my main focus. So that's what we're going to talk about today is how do we equip ourselves in 30 minutes to be ready for whatever happens, because we just don't know. So let's jump into it. The big thing here is that, okay, if you're only using proposals, right, then we really have to think about, will your clients remember you? If they don't have a proposal going out or in need of something, will they remember you? Do they see you often? Do you send emails? Do you post on LinkedIn? How would your overall audience be able to really connect with you outside of those proposals and networking events, or maybe your BD team is going on, golfing trips, all those things? What happens when it just kind of clears out? So that's the real question here, and what you can bring to your leadership is, I'm doing my best with the marketing that we have, but I don't know if they're going to remember us if my whole focus is solely on proposals. So some of you may have seen my 2 minutes, 2 cents in 2 minutes on the SMPS YouTube page. If you haven't, I'm basically going to say the same thing here. And the idea is this marketing rule of seven. And the reason why I bring this up is because you have basically, well, let me explain what the rule of seven is first. The rule of seven basically says that you need to have at least 7 touches with your prospective client before they are bought in to actually sign with you or work with you on a project. So that's 7 times. 7 times. And I don't know if a lot of us are doing that. We may do it with calls. There's just a lot of different ways you can do the touches, but because we are taken out, so many pieces are taken out of our toolbox right now. How can we make sure that we continually get those touches so that they can continue to select us as a firm to deliver a project? So what we need to do is create ongoing, which is scary, I know, the frequency part, but we have to create ongoing content that helps your clients. Matthew said when he started, I'm like so committed to this idea is that it's like, no, you want to listen and solve, not tell and sell. And that's been the motto for DG Marketing for, it's actually been 4 years this April. And it's really about making sure that you understand your audience first and then create content for them. I think that especially if there's a lot of things going on, I mean, I would imagine I've seen email open rates go down during this time. I wonder why. There's so many people using emails. There's so many different things going on. So we have to really consider all the different ways we have to get those 7 touches. So I know I'm kind of going off on a tangent here, but I think that it's very, very important that you look at, and kind of map out where are we touching people? Because if it's just proposals, we've got some work to do. So when I talk about content, a lot of people go straight to blogs. Okay, we gotta make some blogs. I'm like, yeah, you can, but you don't have to. And before I get too deep into this, I do recommend if you have resistant people, technical professionals that you're trying to get content from, I started calling them articles just because it seems to work better. Just because I think they take it more seriously that it's not this blog term that marketing created. So anyway, take that as you will. It's helped me significantly by calling them articles. It makes them feel better. I don't know. I'd feel better if I wrote an article. Okay, whatever. But the idea is to think about all the types of content that we can create, right? So there's blogs, but you can also do case studies. Okay, what successful projects have we had? How did we weather the storm? How did we go through the challenges? How did we survive that snowstorm or whatever the case is? Let's talk about that. That's a piece of content. White papers, ebooks, very similar depending on how you put it together. But the idea is let's talk about a topic for an extended amount of time. This has maybe some graphs, more, just probably a little bit more in depth. So the white papers, interviews. What do I mean by that? I've done a couple of times in the past, 5 questions with, John Doe. And that really helps not only create content that you can post on your website and share through social media, but it also allows people to meet the people behind the logo. A lot of times, and I've said this so many times in my presentations, is that I know there's a B2C, like business to consumer, and there's business to business, but we also, I always think about it as human to human. And so when we get kind of locked down in thinking that, our B2B has to be super formal and it can't really include people or whatever the case is, reconsider that, because guess what? I'm a human just like you. And I want to know who I'm going to be working with. I want to actually like the person that I'm working with. And so we really have to keep that in mind. Webinars, which is one of a huge lead generator, start talking about, just something like this. Think about how many people are signing up. Think about how many emails and the contact information that you can create. The main thing here is moving some of those maybe website visitors and social media followers into known users that are actually in your CRM system that you can start to email and all those things. So think about that. Project highlights. It's a great way to look back. If you're like, I don't know what to talk about right now, talk about some projects. Talk about what happened before. I find that the technical person really loves talking about project highlights, and they usually give you more straightforward answers when it comes to project highlights, because that's what happened. It's X's and O's, and they can say, well, that worked, that didn't work, because I don't know if you faced this in the past, but it's hard to say, what is every time. So going to project highlights really allows people to or at least your technical team, to focus in and really talk about what happened. Videos, always amazing. Just like I said, the 2 cents with 2 cents in 2 minutes, I thought was really great about SMPS to come up with. These videos are just very important to see me in person. This does not have to always be a huge production, but you want it to be very nice. So I could go on a whole tangent on that. I think there's ways to do less rehearsed content that feels authentic, but there's also a need to also be very clean and presentable and professional. So that's another day. I only have 30 minutes. Okay. So then there's short presentations, maybe something like this actually, that you may not set up as a webinar, but you could just share out. Maybe there's a pretty detailed slide that you can post. On LinkedIn, you can now actually add a document. I've been doing those, adding some PDFs, talking about my speaking engagements or something like that. That's a really great way to also share these pieces of content. I already talked about ebooks. Ebooks can be a lot of fun, especially depending on how much room you have to play with it. But you can embed videos, or at least a picture that looks like a video, and click it to, a YouTube channel. I suggest having ask an expert that you can click to email. So we're talking about interactive ebooks. It doesn't have to just be, womp womp, right? Because I didn't have a better word for that. Then there's also podcasts. So now this is a more well thought out way to go about it. But if you're like, you know what, I don't feel comfortable with videos, but I do want to get content out there. I want to have a following of listeners to know what we're talking about in the thought leadership pieces that we're working on. Podcasts could also be a very great way to do it. Maybe you can partner with some consultants that you work with, or subcontractors that you usually work with, and you can maximize on both of your audiences. So there's a lot of different ways that you can look at content. So don't just think, okay, yeah, I need to write a blog. There's so many ways that, and I didn't even list them all. I'm sure there's like another 5 that I'm not thinking of. But again, just think about all the different ways. There's infographics. There's just so many ways we can share content. Again, because we got to get to those 7 touches. So what I want to do now is, we've kind of addressed the issue, right? Like, okay, what happens when everything stops, the world stops like it is right now, and I can't do these business development things. Okay, we have to create content. Here are all the kinds of content, but now I want to actually provide you with some homework, if you will, just so you can say, you actually got something from this. It's not just pointing out the obvious, which is we need to create some content. And I'm not going to lie, this is really exciting for me, because I've been talking about content for quite some time, and the world ended up needing more content in this space. So it really works out that, and it's something I'm very passionate about. So happy to discuss it. So with that, where do we start, right? So here's some suggestions in the step, in 3-step approach. So one is, when you are creating content, and also before I get into this, think about the content that you already have. Okay, don't feel like you need to start from scratch. I think it's important to go through this experience if you don't have any content or anything to look from, but I highly suggest you look through your proposals, look through the different pieces of content that you have, your brochures, project highlight sheets, project data sheets, all those things that could really house a lot of content. But if you were starting from step one, a clean slate, I would suggest ask your team, who is your audience, right? And I'm not just talking about the decision makers. I'm talking about the influencers as well. So what does that mean? There are people that can influence a decision that maybe the C-suite makes a decision on. For example, I was tasked as the online marketing strategist at my former firm to find some website vendors, right? Am I the decision maker in that case? No, but I brought all of the vendors to the table for the decision maker to make a decision, and also provided my feedback about who I think we should go with, because of course they're going to ask. So when we're thinking about content, don't just focus so much on the decision maker. Think about the person that's actually going to be reading this, or usually sees issues in their facility, or notices that they need to expand, or all those different things. Think about that person too, because they're likely going to be the one to take your information to the decision maker. So in the step one, I want you to think about like 3 personas. It could be a facility manager, it could be, a healthcare president, a hospital president. It could be whatever that audience is, and try to think about 3. Think about their motivations. What are they like? Do they like things fast? Do they like things, very descriptive? What do they like? What are their motivations? Are they motivated by being promoted? Are they motivated by doing something different? Just think about those things. And of course, this is like, you're putting people in boxes, but we got to do that in marketing, right? And then how do they make decisions? Does it take them a long time to get to that point? And just think about all of that. So the whole point of step one is to really understand your audience. Why? Because you're writing to your audience. Sometimes I think you'll find when you ask your teams, they don't always think about that. And so we have to be, especially as marketers and business developers, we have to be the main client advocate at the end of the day. A lot of people are thinking about what they want to write. We have to think about what people want to read. And don't forget about that, because that is so important. Okay, so let's say we have our three personas. What are their pain points? What is keeping them up at night, right? What are they concerned about? What are they thinking about? Are they concerned about downtime? Are they concerned about data security? Are they concerned about remote, the remote workplace and different things like that? What are they concerned about? And you do that by really thinking about your customer, but this allows you to find something to talk about that resonates with them, because it's like, if you're going to help me with get rid of this pain I have, I'm listening, right? If I'm someone that is concerned about downtime and I read how to avoid downtime in your facility, I'm definitely going to read that, right? So that's what we're trying to do here, is to really dig in to those heartstrings and understand what makes them tick and what are they concerned about. But also, I like to talk about here in step 2 is not as just their pain points. It could be their dreams and their aspirations. So if they want to have a world-class facility, their pain point is figuring out how to get there. So if you can provide that as well, this is how you do it. This is how, X, Y, Z. So really think about what are they missing that is keeping them from their goals. And finally, in step 3, we figure out what we can do to help them with that. Okay. And that's how you really start creating very, very, client-focused content that feels good, that resonates, and specifically going to the group that you want to speak to. Okay. Now, I do want to say with the services, don't just think about the ones you have listed on your website. Think about the soft skills. I remember I did an interview for one of my clients. I did like a client interview for them, talking to some of their clients, and their number one thing was that they were their clients loved about them was their response time. It's like, they're so responsive. Every time I needed anything, they were very responsive. And so don't forget about things like that too. That is very important. And you can create content from there. I'm trying to hold back and not talk too much because there's so much I want to say here. But I hope that helps kind of just start thinking about how we can create content if we don't have it in house right now. And then finally, before we open up for questions, when you are thinking about, you have your idea for a piece of content, 5 ways to avoid downtime in your facility. Let's just say, okay, that seems like that is a great one to look at. But now, how do I write it? So this is where I highly suggest people to look at the what, so what, now what approach that I have to content. I think every piece of content should answer these questions. What's the topic, right? What are we talking about? So what? Who cares? Who cares? Because if we're not allowing or we're not sharing with the reader or the watcher or whomever why this is relevant to them, this means nothing. So we have to be very clear. Hey, if you are concerned about downtime in your facility, this is a great blah 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 blah. However you want to do it. But the idea is we want to be very clear, and the reader should be clear on why they would want to read it. And then finally, now what? What now? This is basically the call to action, and this is why having those 7 touches, those 7 touches kind of organized is so helpful. Because if I read five ways to avoid downtime in my facility, I get to the end, I understand the what, I understand the so what, the now what. Oh, you can register for our webinar that talks about this in deeper detail. Oh wow, I'm signed up. Now at the end of the webinar, I get an email about how well it went, and then another article to something else. And this is how we create those 7 touches, right? Because we have got to get them. And if we don't have the ability to meet people right there in front of you, we have to figure out how we touch them in other ways. Now, think about also how you're going to get them that content. Social media is a great way, but should not be the only way. Remember, social media is simply a megaphone. That is all it is. It's literally like, hey, I'm talking about something, but guess what? If you have nothing to talk about, a megaphone is no help, right? So we have to think about what we want to say, but also where we want to tell that story. So LinkedIn is always one of my favorites. I'm sure a lot of you have like some company pages, or at least your technical group, your leadership should have a LinkedIn page, because it's really, really, really helpful and probably much further along than many people know as far as the social media engine. You can also send emails. Emails are a great way. Now, again, we talked about a lot of people are getting a lot of emails now. So it could be a little difficult to get through. But again, all I need to see is your name to remember that you still exist. I may not have to open the email. I may not click in the email, but don't feel like all is lost if, the open rates aren't quite what they see or what they were. If I see DG marketing in my inbox, well, okay, yep, they're still there. They're still ticking. And that's a touch. So don't forget about that too. There's soft touches as well. And, just think about, how can I get my business developers to start sharing these things? I used to actually completely write an email for them to copy and paste that would send them to a certain place on our website. Or, I would give them the actual PDF of the case study so that they could share that. Again, all of these are touches, and they're very, very important. And they're all showcasing your company as not just a thought leader, but a trusted resource, a trusted advisor, because you actually are helping me through my pain point. So with that, I feel like I want to say so much more, but I only have 30 minutes. I want to leave some time for questions. So Matthew, do you have any questions, or have there been any submitted so far?
We do have a couple questions.
Okay.
One moment, we'll pull those up. We have a couple questions that came through from the attendees. First question we have is, do you have any statistics on which of these digital channels are getting the most engagement?
Yes. So the most engaged are webinars, as you probably could imagine. But they really have to be, they can't be long webinars. So make sure you do your due diligence to figure out, okay, if I know this person's going to talk a lot, let's make it a series. Let's do two. So there's a lot of different ways you can look at that. So I think webinars are really great for engagement. LinkedIn is really great for engagement if you ask people to interact. Sometimes we forget that if we ask a question, a lot of people will do it. You tell them what to do. Hey, comment below with your ideas. Like if you feel like this, or comment because of that. So keep that in mind, that people aren't just going to engage. You have to really kind of tell them to.
Great, great. We have another question. It says, regarding the types of touches, would you call submitting a proposal a touch?
I would even call that a very strong touch, maybe even two touches, but it is not seven, because it is. It's like something that people would kind of look up, pick up a couple of times as they're reviewing, but you really want to get those 7 touches, or at least 6 touches before they actually get that proposal in, so they're very familiar with your brand.
Great, great. We have an additional question. It says, how do you recommend getting to and highlighting the what, so what, now what? What is the best way to showcase that to get their attention?
So I use it as an outline. So I don't say it, super clearly as far as like what it is. It's kind of like making sure you knock out those points as you write it. The what is pretty simple because I work on that through the title. And remember, the title is very important. You have to have something that grabs attention and speaks to a pain point. But then with the so what, really talk about how this will impact them, how this will impact, their clientele, their market, or something like that, or why you're kind of telling them. And then you basically, the rest of the blog or the article or whatever piece of content, you're just backing up why this is important, and also maybe even how to apply it to them. And then the now what is literally that call to action at the end. It could be, make sure to schedule a discovery call or call this person. And I would highly suggest don't just make it a generic phone number. Actually give someone that you can trust, that you know is going to answer the phone or an email and share it with you. You want to make sure you remember, share that as well.
Great. We have a couple
Hopefully
more.
That answers the question. Yeah,
sure. We have a couple more. This one says, how often should we ask people to engage in social media posts? Do people stop paying attention if you ask for too much engagement on social media?
Well, let's remember that we are not the only one that's sharing. So although I may see your post or I may not, I just saw about 100 other ones as I was scrolling through. So don't feel like you're doing too much because we see it a lot because we're the ones posting it, we're the ones doing it, that doesn't mean that they feel like it's overwhelming. Don't be afraid to ask, but also you want to just share information. So I would say, keep it about 50-50. You want to just make sure you're sharing information, and some people will likely, if the information is good, they'll comment anyway. But if you're just trying to figure out how to engage with your audience, definitely ask questions. It doesn't even have to be comment below. It can say, what do you think about this new technology or this new trend or whatever the case is, that will also bring about engagement. It's social. It's social media. That's the key word there is social, and the idea is to make sure that we're engaging.
Perfect. We have additional one. Can you give recommendations on how to create engaging, helpful content that doesn't feel like a sales pitch?
That it doesn't feel like what?
A sales pitch?
Oh, sales pitch. Yeah. So what I was trying to give you the secret sauce to was when you make it about your clients, it doesn't feel like a sales pitch. And when you make it about helping them or solving something for them, it's not a sales pitch. The other thing is, make sure when you're writing that you don't have your company name pop up immediately. The idea is that it's a subtle sell, especially when you're looking at content. Talk about the problem, talk about the issue and how it impacts. It could be how it impacts your team, how it impacts John Doe at XYZ company. But the idea is that now what piece is where you kind of do your sales. And again, it's like, hey, if you need help, we're here to help. If you'd like to learn more, download this case study. It's still very helpful. So if you just keep that helpful tone, I think that you'll be very, very happy with the results.
Great, great. So with that, Danielle, do you have any additional comments before we wrap up the session today?
Other than be my friend on LinkedIn. I talk a lot on LinkedIn. So, and you can engage with me, Danielle Gray, MBA. You'll find that yellow background and me with the hat. So please feel free to reach out and be my friend, and let's stay connected. But that's basically it. Thank you.
Great, great. Well, on behalf of SMPS, thank you to our presenter, Danielle, and to all of today's participants. Following today's meetup, you will receive a link to complete a brief survey of today's session. Your feedback is very important to us as we plan future programs. Thank you again for joining. You may now disconnect.